Okay. Afternoon again, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So today we are doing four main things. Just had to count it out on my fingers. Four main things. So we are looking at process analysis essays. So that's the first thing we're doing today. We will be looking at alleviating nervousness in public speaking when you have to do a presentation.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. We'll be looking at that. Then we will be looking at verbs and parallelism, so grammar and writing style, or how to finesse your writing. And finally, we will end with doing the extemporaneous speeches. So we will split into groups of 4. Each person will get their 3 minutes to share their speech. As the person is speaking, jot down your notes, your observations, and then when we come back into class, we will share those notes and observations. Right? One other announcement, your quiz, you have a quiz coming up. It will be open from Friday to Sunday, so we will be available for 72 hours on Canvas. It is 2.5 hours long. So make sure whenever in that 72-hour period you sit down to do the quiz, you block out 2.5 hours to complete it. If you navigate away from the page, you will not be able to get back in. If you close and try to come back, you will not be able to get back in. So make sure you take the 2.5 hours, block it out, do the whole quiz, submit, and then leave the page, okay? If you leave the page for whatever reason, you will not be allowed back into the quiz. So make sure you can set aside that 2.5 hours. All right? So the very first thing we will do today, process essays. Today we are looking at writing a process essay, process analysis, looking at a process analysis outline, how to alleviate nervousness before and during presentations. We will be looking at verbs and parallelism, and then we will do our breakout activity. So first, a basic explanation of the process analysis essay. Process analysis is a form of explanation where you take a large process or practice and you break it down into its steps to help explain it. So remember, expository writing is a way of explaining something. It's a form of essay that's meant to explain. In this particular case, we are explaining how we do something. And we're going step by step and explaining how we do something. So it sounds vaguely familiar because you are borrowing some techniques from analysis by division. That's why we start with analysis by division, because some of the techniques that we use for that essay is useful for every other kind of essay. So with the process analysis, you want to look at the overall process, then you want to break it down into its steps. What are the steps I need to do to make this process happen? When you break it down into the steps, you want to look at which step comes first and put it in sequence. So I have to do step 1 before I do step 2, before I do step 3. And then for each step, you want to break it down into the stages, right? So let's say you're looking at brewing a cup of coffee. So to brew a cup of coffee, you need to fill the water well with water. You need to put the coffee in the basket, and you need to set up the machine and turn it on. So those are my 3 main steps. Put water in the machine, put coffee in the coffee filter, set up the machine and turn it on. For each step then, I have different stages I need to go through to complete each step. So to put water in the machine, I need to fill up a container with water, pour it into the machine, make sure it is at the level I need it to be to brew as many cups as I'm planning to brew. To put the coffee in the filter, well, I like to season my coffee, so I put nutmeg and cinnamon, a splash of essence, and then the amount of coffee per cup that I need, that I want to brew. And I set that up. And step 3, to set up the machine and turn it on, I need to stick in the carafe in its place on the heater plate. I need to put the basket into its place in the machine. Make sure that the steam spout is over the basket. Close the lid, and then I can turn it on. So as you see, with each step, there are stages or things I have to do to make each step happen. So what you're doing is you're explaining a process step by step and breaking down each step. So it's a very detailed explanation. So for example, to write a good essay, you need to brainstorm and plan, draft and redraft, and edit and re-edit. So the process is to write a good essay. The steps: to brainstorm and plan, draft and redraft, and edit and re-edit. And then I would have to break down each step into the different stages. So brainstorm, literally come up with a topic, think about the topic, jot down all the things you can think of. Plan, start grouping all those all the ideas together, pick out which is the most important or the cohesive step that other things can go under, write an outline, draft and redraft. I will write my first draft, I will look at it, I will redraft it and redraft it until I like it, and then specific steps for editing. So we have 2 examples that you can read through. And again, it's annotated. So there are notes on the side. So there are explanations for why the writer does what the writer does in each section. So you can get a better understanding of how the essay is put together, right? So we have 2 samples here. Where is this? Right. So let's look at writing the let's look at the actual outline. right? So again, you can see we are splitting up the process into 3 main stages. So when you are brainstorming and figuring out how the process runs in sequence, you also want to brainstorm and figure out how can I group these stages, these steps into 3 main areas, right? See, we're always looking at breaking down into smaller pieces. So organizing the big thing breaks into 3 smaller things, breaks into 3 smaller things each, right? So as we're looking at the process, you want to wrap your mind around what are the 3 main stages? What are the steps, that will sum up all the other little itty bitty things I need to do to make this process happen. So I've just started sharing some writing philosophy, education philosophy. It is a mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So, not everything we hear or see is fact or true. Sometimes it's just an opinion, and it's okay to have an opinion, but fact check it. So we talked about process analysis. So let's move on to preparing for public speaking. So I've said it before, and I will stress it again and again and again. Preparation, practice and prepare. The more you practice and prepare, the more confident you are going into the event, right? So this checklist is a list of things you can do before, during, and after your presentation. And it does actually have a calming effect when you could tick off items on your checklist and move on. You feel like you're progressing, right? So you'll see in here things like practicing, developing a rough draft of material, knowing where you're going, getting there early, familiarizing yourself with the space, preparing for things like dry mouth, or if you're a nervous sweater, make sure you have a handkerchief and so on. So being as prepared as possible for any possible outcome. So you can look through this checklist, and it'll be things to follow as you are preparing for presentation. Some of it might not apply, but it will give you a good idea how you can prepare and calm yourself before you give a presentation. So let's look at some more advice here.
The famous writer and public speaker Mark Twain once said that there are 2 kinds of public speakers. 1, those who get nervous, and 2, liars. Getting nervous before and during a presentation are completely common, and you don't have to let it affect your performance. So in this video, we're going to talk about some mindsets, some realizations that you should have going into presenting, and also some practical tips to help manage that nervousness. Coming up. So let's talk about some realizations and then some practical tips. The first realization is that you do not look as nervous as you feel. I was recently coaching some presenters, and one of the speakers finished and she said, "Oh my gosh, I was so nervous." Now, she had done a good job, but I didn't realize she was nervous. So I said to her, on a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous were you? And she said, 10 out of 10. I was freaking out. And I asked the people watching, the other participants, how nervous did she look? And they said about a 2. So she felt 10 out of 10 top of the scale, the nerves. But we couldn't tell. She looked totally composed and normal. She did a great job. So just this one realization alone, I think, is really powerful, is that you do not look anywhere near as nervous as you may feel on the inside. And that alone should, I think, relax you. The second realization is just because you're nervous, it doesn't mean you're not doing a great job in that moment. So another presenter said after on a recent coaching session, she said, "Oh my gosh, I blacked out. I totally don't remember even what I did." I don't know if she actually blacked out, but that's how she described it. She was detached from what was happening. Even though she felt detached, she did a great job, total home run. She did the best I've ever seen her. So just because you feel nerves and they may be getting the best of you, it doesn't mean that you're not actually performing excellently. Keep that in mind. The third realization is that nervousness and excitement are really two sides of the same coin. Bruce Springsteen, a famous musician, talked about how early on he would get very nervous, a lot of stage fright before he would perform, and then he realized, wait a minute, this is like excitement. This is the same thing as I'm excited to go play music for a huge crowd. It gets me going. And so public speaking is a lot like that. You should be a little excited. It doesn't have to be thought of in your mind as, I'm really nervous. You know, you can say, hey, you know what, I'm excited. So you can even take a little control over your thoughts in that way. So those are some realizations. Let's get now to some practical tips. First practical tip is to practice like crazy, and here's why. In my experience, and I've been coaching professional speakers and coaching college students to do presentations for about 20 years now, 95% of the results that you get during your presentation are worked out during your practice time. So if you practice like crazy and really prepare well, that presentation is most likely going to go very well. About 95% of that is all worked out. So even if you're nervous, even if a couple of little things go wrong, it's almost always going to come out pretty much the way you practiced it. So that's a great understanding of the process, and that hard work does pay off, and you can get, and so you should make that practice as realistic as possible. Maybe even have a couple of distractions in there, that's fine. If you make a mistake, don't start over, push through it. If you feel nervous, don't rehearse talking about to yourself or out loud how nervous you are, because then you might do that during the presentation, and that usually makes things worse. So work that out through practice. The second concrete tip is, as you're preparing, you want to focus everything on your audience and your message. If you're at all focused on yourself, that's going to spike your nerves. So a comedian is trying to get people to laugh. They're working on their joke. They're not thinking about how they come across. They're working for their outcome. They're working for their good performance. If you're trying to train people, you should be focused on getting them up to speed so they really do know how to do this. If you're trying to share a message, focus on saying it in a way that's going to land and that's going to stick so that everybody gets the most benefit. Anytime we start thinking about, how am I coming across? Do I look professional? Do I look nervous, or are people going to judge me? It's going to lead in the wrong direction. You have to totally flip it and think about your audience and your message. The next tip is to visualize yourself doing it well, especially the opening moments, that first 10 to 20 seconds. Now, when I say visualization, I don't mean anything weird or experimental or new agey. I mean it the way athletes do it. In other words, before a batter comes up to swing, that batter is going to put himself in the right state of mind so that he visualizes himself hitting the ball well. Adam Vinatieri used to be a kicker for the New England Patriots, and in the 2001 Super Bowl against the St. Louis Rams, the clock was running down. They were tied 17-17. This is like high pressure situation for a kicker, and he successfully kicked a 48-yard field goal with 2 seconds left on the clock. The clock was running. There was no timeouts. It was running, and he did it, and they won the game. And after the game, people said, how did you do it? The most pressure that any kicker has been under ever. And he said, I have made that kick 1,000 times. And he meant it in his life, in his mind. In a kicker's life, that is the moment they live for. And he had visualized himself doing it successfully 1,000 times. So that in that moment, it felt like he was just doing it one more time. So when you're picturing yourself in the room, setting up your visual aids, getting ready, and that first 10 or 20 seconds of the presentation, you're picturing it happening successfully, picturing the steps it takes to get there, then you're going to be set up for success. So those are the tips I have for not being as nervous. I recommend you use them in your next presentation. Look forward to your comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. God bless.
So he gave us some useful
The famous
tips here, and how to avoid feeling nervous. Some of them, when we realize or when we examine some of the thoughts that make us nervous, and we ignore those thoughts or we put those thoughts aside, you find that you will feel so much more relaxed, so less, so able to go ahead and do what you need to do. Right? So realizing that people are assuming you are more confident, that you have it together, and they're willing to listen to you. Realizing that nervousness can give you that energy boost if you think of it as excitement, as, oh, let's get it done, let's go ahead, right? So remember these tips. You could try them out when you find yourself getting nervous before doing a presentation. So let's look at some more.
She's the senior producer and reporter at Entertainment City, but she's here with us today to get rid of our fear about public speaking. Terry Hart. Hello. This is an important one, okay? I threw this out to the audience before you even got here. Like, who is deathly afraid of public speaking? Put up your hand. Yeah. See? This is the norm. Mm-hmm. This is what we're seeing everywhere. We see it, across gender, across race, socioeconomic, whatever. People don't want to speak in front of an audience.
No, people are terrified of it, to the point that some people rank it, and maybe some of you folks rank it, higher than the fear of death. So we're going to try and bring that down a notch today, okay? Public speaking should not be scarier than death.
Right.
So, but I think that one of the things is people are afraid to fail at it. And the overriding concern is that people think, I should just be able to do this. Is that what you think? Like, why can't I just stand up and speak? Well, I couldn't do a marketing presentation or an audit or anything that somebody else has been trained in without doing the work around it. Yeah. So public speaking is something that you can get better at with a little bit of work and some tips and tricks and a few things that I think you should just get out of your head that are kind of old myths about public speaking.
So what are the myths that we tell ourselves to get through it?
So one thing, we've all heard this, right? Imagine your audience naked or in their underwear. Don't do that.
I've never done that.
Yeah, don't do that, especially if it's at work, because nobody needs to see that with your colleagues. You really don't. But the thing is, the reason that that exists is it somehow puts you so that you're putting your audience as your adversary.
Yeah.
And your audience isn't your adversary. They're there to learn something from you. You're the expert, and they're there to help you. You guys clapping when we start this helps us.
That's right.
So when you are public speaking, whether it be 5 people or 500, trust that they're on your side.
Absolutely.
Another thing that's out there is that you should rehearse on your, device or in front of a mirror. Don't do that.
So you never do that, huh?
I never do.
I don't do that either.
I think it's a terrible idea. We should never see ourselves speak. It's unnatural. Like, it's not, and what you're looking at in the mirror is never what anybody else is paying attention to. Mm-hmm. They're paying attention to what you're saying. So focusing on yourself in the mirror or an iPhone, you're going to be paying attention to what you shouldn't be. Pay attention to the words.
So you're thinking of, like, so my lip does a weird thing. I will stare at that lip thing.
Totally.
Right? Like, that's all I'm looking at. I'm not even thinking about what I'm saying. Or you're going to stare at that imperfection that you believe in your head you have. The audience is not aware of it at all. No. You once saw yourself in an interview with Robert Pattinson. What did you do?
I sneezed.
Okay.
And it was on television. And so I, of course, obsessively watched that sneeze over and over and over. And I looked terrible sneezing. Everybody looked, but we're not supposed to see it. It's why our eyes close naturally when we sneeze.
Yeah.
So I feel the same same way about public speaking. I feel like we shouldn't see how our mouth moves, what our eyes do, because nobody's paying attention to that.
Yeah.
They're paying attention to what you're saying.
Okay, so what should we do? You have an acronym that really helps you with your own public speaking appearances.
Yeah, so I've done a bunch of corporate coaching around this, Trace, and I found that people needed kind of a few steps to go through. So I came up with an acronym, and I use this acronym for myself 22 years later every time I do anything in public. So the acronym is BRIEF, B-R-I-E-F.
What's the B for?
The B stands for believe. Believe what you're saying. Oftentimes, we're asked to give speeches or a presentation, and we get notes from marketing or communications or our bosses, and they aren't words that ring true. Maybe there's something in there that just doesn't roll off your tongue. Spend the time and make sure you believe everything that's coming out of your mouth. That's step one.
Okay, because if you believe it, you will feel it and be able to present it in a way that you feel confident about, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and the R?
Rehearse.
Yes.
Now there's no exact way to rehearse properly. You have to find your own right way, but a really good kind of standard is your text, your script, your presentation should be completed 2 days before your event. Now, if you're waiting on approvals from a boss or communications or marketing, tell them that. Ask for what you need. Say, I need this 2 days before so I can get my rehearsing in. You're allowed to ask for what you need when you're the expert standing in front of the room.
That's right. How do you rehearse? Because I do the shower. I do it in the shower.
So
I use my dog and my kids. Yeah, and like I'm losing you guys. Come on, pay attention.
This is a moment. This is a moment. I usually run through it twice the night before and 3 times the morning of.
Good for you.
And I do it in front of my husband or my tribe, I like to say. I have a tribe, and your tribe, they want to hear the whole thing. If they're really your tribe, they don't want to just hear snippets, they want to hear the whole thing. So find your tribe.
Okay.
And
they'll be honest with you.
They will be honest with you, where it's working, where it's not working. And I also do it standing up. I don't do it slouching on a couch. I don't do it. I actually give myself the body memory that I need to be in that moment the next day.
I love that. Okay, so that is rehearse. We have IEF and only a minute left. So
interesting. Trust that you are. Trust that what you're saying is important to the people who are hearing it. As much as you've rehearsed it, this is the first time they're hearing it. It's interesting. Believe that.
It is. It is. What you have to say is specific because you're the only person that has that information. Trust that. E?
Edit.
Yeah.
Don't try to fill a time in an agenda. Make what you're saying concise, important, and only what needs to be there.
Okay, I struggle with that one too sometimes. So that's a very good tip. And F stands for?
Fun.
Yeah.
You're the expert. And I don't mean top hat and cane fun. You don't have to do a show. And I don't mean necessarily tell jokes. Unless you're good at that, then have at her.
Yeah.
But I just mean smile.
Yeah.
Enjoy the moment. Everybody looks nice smiling.
It's true.
And if you smile, your audience is going to respond to that. And it is fun. You are giving people information that they need.
And you're in a position where people want to listen to you. So use that to your advantage. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Terry, such great empowering words. Can we hear it for Terry?
Right. So I do like to add, or just to clarify, or
okay, be honest with me here.
Addendums. So she talks about not practicing in front of a mirror. And then she talks about finding your own way to rehearse. Now, the reason we tell you to practice in front of a mirror is not so much to pay attention to, those quote unquote problem spots that you might be obsessed with looking at. It's not like looking in the mirror to put on your makeup or to shave or get dressed or anything like that. What you're looking for, especially as new public speakers or people who have not been speaking in public all that long, what you're looking for are your natural habits, your tics, your gestures, things you might do with your hand that you're not aware of, or expressions you might make that you are not really aware of when you're talking. That can be distracting because even though she says that people are just there to listen to you, we know from experience with communication that it is both verbal and non-verbal. It's both language and paralanguage. Making eye contact is important. Reducing the amount of fidgeting you do, because that suggests nervousness, right? So when you stand up in front of the mirror, if you find your hand is shaking a lot, or you're moving your hands too much, comes up in front of your face, you're always wiping, scratching, doing something that's distracting, you have the opportunity to practice restraining those motions so that people are forced to listen to you because they're not seeing the hands waving about. They're not seeing you shift from side to side every few seconds as if you're nervous or tired or disinterested, etc. Right? So just to bear in mind that while brief is good, practicing in front of a mirror, looking for your natural state and where you might need to enhance it, reduce it, etc., is also very good if you're a first-time speaker or you're very nervous. This is, you haven't been speaking in public all that long, right? So we just have a few more.
Expect to have stress right before your presentation. Remember, it will help you do your best. Here are 6 suggestions for handling stress before you present. Visit the room where you will be speaking. Walk around and visualize how the room will be set up. If you arrive the evening before your program, try to do that then. Get a good night's sleep. Eat your normal meals. If you normally exercise, try to do that ahead of time to reduce stress. Rolling your head, yawning, and making funny faces can also help you relax your face, your throat, and your neck. Plan to deal with a dry mouth. Most speakers make sure they have water available. Here's another idea. Suppose I have a thick, juicy lemon in my hand. Then I take out a knife and I slice the lemon in half. The juice runs all over my hand. Did you salivate? This is a simple way to deal with a dry mouth. Just think about lemons. Here's another suggestion. Carefully bite the side of your tongue with your back teeth or lightly bite the inside of your cheek. Both of those will cause you to salivate. They really do work. Be in the presentation room early so you can check everything. For example, I usually always request to have a table in the room, and I usually never have the table when I get there. However, since I'm there early, I have plenty of time to arrange to have a table brought into the room. I like to try to talk to some audience members before I begin. Often I find people to use as examples of my major points. I ask them if I can call on them during the program and ask them to share the point. It's a great way to get the audience involved. It takes the spotlight off of me as a speaker and puts it on the audience. Avoid negative thoughts and negative people. Think positive. Make affirming statements, such as, I really know this material. I have information to share. I am so glad to be here. I'm so glad the audience is here. Try these ideas and see what works for you. Just know to expect stress, but know that you can handle it in a professional manner. If you enjoy this video, make sure to check out our Medical Presentation Essentials course.
So again, we see some nice tips here on how to prepare beforehand to avoid feeling that nervous when you're doing a presentation. So really and truly, the more you prepare, the more you feel confident and comfortable with your material, the less nervous you will feel in that situation. This includes proxemics, setting up your space, controlling your space, knowing where everything is and how you're going to use the room, even if it's as practicing, standing by a podium or walking around and so on and so on. So there are different things you can do to help prepare. The more comfortable you are with the material, the less nervous you're going to feel, right? So we have a few more.
7 years, I presented the news on television. And every Thursday, I was there in front of my camera, and I heard the director in my ears saying, "Attention, studio for live, 5, 4, 3. And every Thursday, I felt my heart racing. Every week, 7 years. Now, I tell you this because there is this huge misunderstanding that experienced speakers, they are not nervous. When you see that speaker on stage and you say like, well, they do it in a natural way. No, they don't. They are nervous. But the difference for me between an experienced and an inexperienced speaker is that experienced people know how to handle the nerves. And I want to give you this insight because it really helped me a lot to deal with my nerves. Because it all begins with the brain. That's why my explanation begins, because you have to look at your brain as having these different antennas, and your brain really wants to protect yourself, and it takes that job very seriously. So as soon as the antennas perceive a kind of danger, a button is pushed. It's a button somewhere here in your head, in your brain, and it's called the amygdala. It has the shape of an almond, the color of an almond. It is small as an almond, but it's a very important button, because as soon as the button is pushed, that's what we call the fight or flight reaction. You have all these sensations in your body, typically the things that you experience when you are nervous, like a dry mouth, legs shaking, your heart really beating very fast, your respiration is going faster. And this is something that actually is there to protect yourself, because as it is a fight or flight reaction, imagine that there is this car nearly racing into you when you cross a road. The fact that you have this heartbeat that is fast, it actually prepares you to react and to run, actually. Now, the thing is, when you stand in front of an audience, you cannot run. So the antennas, they don't make a difference between a real danger and a danger in your head. So what happens is when you, in front of your audience, you cannot run, you kind of freeze, but still you have these sensations, so you want to protect yourself. Now, this is on a subconscious level. What happens on a conscious level is that actually, when you stand in front of your audience, you want to protect yourself. So actually by doing this, now this is overdoing it. But to some extent, that's what speakers actually do in front of an audience. You stand like that, you really want to protect yourself, looking down or looking very quickly from one person to another. Now, what does an experienced speaker do? Exactly the opposite. They, on a conscious level, they make themselves big in front of the audience. You could say that they fake it. Making yourself big, what I mean with that is having that posture in front of your audience that gives you a kind of a positive attitude. Now, to know what that is, just watch television. You can really learn a lot from it. And I advise you to look especially at people, for example, presenting the news, but people standing, because that's the most difficult thing to do, how to stand in front of that audience, what to do with your arms, what to do with your legs. Just look at how they stand and imitate that, because this is a good neutral position. Same thing for the way you look. A tip that I have there is that you actually look at your audience as though you pour them a glass of wine, because this will help you to stay with one person. You look at one individual at a time. The time it takes to pour them a glass of wine, to avoid that you would either look away or look very nervously from one person to another. So the next time you experience these nerves, what I advise you to do is stand and look in a conscious way. Just watch television to know what that can be, and watch TED.com, because on that website you have all these presentations with PowerPoint, without PowerPoint. Look at it without volume, because it helps you to look how they stand. What I absolutely advise you to do is watch Amy Cuddy. She's an expert on body language, and this is exactly what she's talking about faking it. So just have a look, imitate, integrate, and make it your own.
So especially useful here is the idea of body, being aware of your body posture. So again, if you're practicing in front of a mirror, you know, practice. So when she's talking about we close ourselves in, we feel nervous. And so what you're doing is creating a physical barrier between you and your audience, as opposed to sticking out your chest, sticking back your shoulders, holding up your head, and speaking as if you are confident. Your voice will come out differently, and your audience will react differently. Your audience will look at you and go, this person knows what he or she is about. I can trust this person to deliver the message. I want to listen and be engaged. Right? So let's look at an example of nervousness versus overcoming nerves.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Public Speaking. Today's first presenter is Ranjit, and I would ask everyone to give him their full attention. Chantal, could you dim the lights, please?
The British imposed a lot of unpopular taxes on the American colonists and didn't let them elect representatives to the British government. In retaliation, the Americans started to boycott British goods. In 1773, Americans in Massachusetts dumped a shipload of British tea into Boston Harbor. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. As punishment, the British imposed laws known as the Intolerable Acts, including the Quartering Act, which made Americans let British soldiers live in their homes. Some of the American colonies created a Declaration of Rights and Grievances, which they sent to Britain, but the British just sent soldiers to the colonies to put down any rebellion. This led to the first battles of the Revolution at Lexington and Concord.
Thank you, Ranjit. I know it's very hard to give a presentation in front of the entire class. Now, would anyone like to offer Ranjit constructive feedback about his presentation? Any tips for what he might do differently next time? For example, were you all able to hear what Ranjit was saying?
Not really. He needs to speak louder and face the audience.
Yes. Great suggestion. Anyone else?
He was reading from his paper, so it didn't feel like he was really talking to us, you know?
Exactly. It's important when you're speaking to look up every sentence or two and make eye contact with someone in the audience. Anything else that Ranjit could do to appear more relaxed and feel more confident?
He could smile more.
Yes, smiling makes us feel relaxed. Oh, and make sure your phone is off before you speak next time. I do have one more suggestion. To connect with listeners, it's a great idea to use a personal story or experience as an example. Can you try that next time?
I think so, yes. Next week, my presentation will be about the causes and effects of stress.
We look forward to hearing it. Ranjit is first up again today, and I look forward to his new presentation. Jorge, could you dim the lights, please?
Good morning. Today I'd like to talk about the causes and effects of stress and how to cope with stress. Stress has many causes, including work or school, life events, changes, or unrealistic expectations of yourself. Some effects of stress include headaches, trouble sleeping, depression, or lack of concentration. I know how hard it can be to deal with stress. Last year, I started working after school to save for college, but I didn't have time to do homework and my grades went down. I had trouble sleeping, I only ate junk food, and I stopped hanging out with my friends. Fortunately, I was able to talk with a school counselor to manage my stress. She suggested that I reduce my hours at my job, eat healthy foods, and get some exercise. So I literally started walking home from school and bringing my lunch. I also asked my teachers for extra help. Now, I feel better. It's important to recognize when you're stressed and to ask for help. Thank you.
Great work, Ranjit. I want you all to reflect on how much stronger today's presentation was. Ranjit looked us in the eyes, he spoke clearly, he smiled at us, and he used a personal anecdote to help us feel more connected to him. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
So with this example, we can see that the young man's first presentation is completely undermined by nerves. He's nervous, he's shaking, he's reading the paper, and so he's not really connecting with the audience. He's not using his space, and so on. And the second one, he has practiced, he's paying attention to his body movement, he's using the space, and also because he's familiar with the topic, is a certain level of confidence. You notice too, his stance is different. He squares his shoulders in the second one, he's conveying confidence, and that impacts the audience. So when we are looking at preparing for a speech, being as confident as you possibly can be, you know, here's some things, or they call them the 10 commandments here. Always remember that you are the expert, you are giving the speech, and for the 5, 10, however long you have to give the presentation, you are the one who knows all the information. Everything is coming from you. You are in charge of it. It is yours. Smile. So in the video we just watched, the instructor told us that smiling makes you feel better. It also makes the audience feel better. The audience feels more relaxed because you look friendly. It alleviates nerves. So don't try a fake smile, but you know, smile, or as the presenters before said, have fun with it. Engage in it. Turn that nervous energy into excitement, into something that you're looking forward to as opposed to something that you're dreading. And smiling actually helps you change that perspective, right? It would release different chemicals in the brain, and you would actually start flipping that energy from nervous to excited, from scary to fun. Always thank your audience, so be grateful. They are spending their time, they're giving up their time when they don't have to. So be grateful for that, be thankful. It makes the audience feel appreciated if you thank them up front and you thank them again at the end. They feel like they've contributed, they've done something, they feel better about your message. We can't stress it enough. Prepare, rehearse, and have a backup plan. So when we talked about the different kind of speech deliveries, impromptu, with the exception of impromptu, you will prepare and rehearse for your extemporaneous, scripted, and memorized speeches. Prepare by jotting down the topic, understanding the topic, brainstorming, organizing, drafting an outline, having your notes there. Rehearse and edit, rehearse and edit until you're so comfortable with your material that even if you stumble, especially if you're reading, if you stumble or if you forget a line, you know what you're trying to say, so you can recover a lot easier, right? As they say here, as the tipster is saying, print out your slides or print out your notes and have them on the side. There's nothing worse than if you're using audio visual, you're using PowerPoint, and you are reading the PowerPoint along with your audience. When we prepare for your presentations, we talk a bit more about how you use visual aids, right? But, you know, keep your notes, have them, be so familiar with them that they're just really a backup to help jog your memory. Be so familiar with the message you're trying to convey that even if you miss a word, miss a reading, or go out of step in how you plan to deliver it, you can recover because you know exactly where you're going. You have a map of what you're trying to say, right? Engage your audience. So keep the focus on your audience, and this is especially good for making eye contact, engage them with some rhetorical questions. If you have the time during your presentation, you know, you could ask some actual questions that require answers so that they feel that they are part of the conversation, they are partaking in your speech. You're not simply being lectured to. You know, it's a different experience. As the medical speaker said, be early. This way, if the setup is not how you want it, if you're missing something or whatever, you have time to fix and prepare. Also, because this relates to proxemics, you have time to set the stage for your presentation. Now that we'll be traveling anyway anytime soon. So even if you're, as you're presenting in your own room, set the stage. Pick your background, pick the part in your room where you get the best lighting, the best background, where you'd feel comfortable, and so on, right? Visualize the outcome you want. So again, imagine being successful in your speech. You know, self-fulfilling prophecy, if you know the term. So if you focus on the negative and you think a negative outcome is going to happen, you're going to make a negative outcome happen. If you focus on the positive and do everything you can to have and visualize having a positive outcome, you will make a positive outcome happen. So a lot of the times the nervousness is because we doubt ourselves, we are undermining ourselves, we are imagining the worst possible scenario. If we imagine instead doing well, feeling confident, getting the audience on our side, we actually will feel more confident as we're speaking, and that will translate to the audience along with the language, the body language, and so on. Right? So trust your audience, trust that the audience is on your side, trust that the audience will be able to understand you, you're speaking as clearly as possible. And if you will have a question and answer session, they will ask the specific questions, right? Now here we're walking a fine line because you do want to anticipate as much as possible what your audience should already know, what they should be comfortable with, what are their expectations, what are their culture, their biases, and so on. And you work that in, right? But trust that after you've done that initial work, that your audience is also there to support you. They want the best, they want the information, they're interested, right? So they will remain engaged. And 10, manage your energy. So as the speech coach said, flip that nervous energy into excitement. Think of it not as, oh my God, I'm going to go down in flames, but oh my gosh, I am about to deliver a really killer speech and people are going to enjoy it. So try to psych yourself that you're excited to speak. Let that nervous energy, that fight or flight, help you take metaphoric flight during your speech, right? So the 10 commandments of preparing and giving a speech. So again, like I said, I'm just popping in some philosophy, a little deeper thinking on why we do what we do. So it's called young thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. Just something to bear in mind. So the next thing we want to look at are parts of speech. We were looking at verbs, verb tenses, verb moods, and verb participles. basic overview of verbs, and we will break it down a little more and look next at tenses.
I didn't know what time it was, then I met you. Oh, what a lovely time it was, how sublime it was too. I didn't know what day it was, you held my hand. Warm like the month of May it was, and I'll say it was grand, grand. To be alive, to be young, to be mad, to be yours alone. Grand to see your face, feel your touch, hear your voice, say I'm all your own. I did not know what year it was, life was no prize. I wanted love, and there it was, shining out of your eyes. I'm wise, and I know what time it is now. Grand to be alive, to be young, to be mad, to be yours alone. Grand to see your face, hear your voice, feel your touch, say I'm all your own. I did not know what year it was, life was no prize. I wanted love, and there it was, shining out of your eyes. I'm wise, and I know what time it is now. I didn't know what time it was, then I met you. Oh, what a lovely time it was, how sublime it was too. I didn't know what day it was. You held my hand, warm like the month of May it was, and I'll say it was grand, grand to be alive, to be young, to be mad, to be yours alone. Grand to see your face, hear your voice, feel your touch, say I'm all your own. I didn't know what year it was, life was no prize. I wanted love and there it was, shining out of your eyes. I'm wise and I know what time it is now. Little moonlight can do.
So we complicated it a bit. There are 12 tenses. Knowing the tenses are important. One of the major mistakes people tend to make is what we call a tense shift. So you start writing in one tense and you move to the next unintentionally. So again, take some time after class, look over, take your notes, write it down. If you need to look up other examples, try formulating your own examples, really get a hang of the different tenses, when you use them, why you use them, and how you use them. So we talked a little bit in making tenses. We talked about verb participles. So let's look at that a little more.
do to you. You're in love, your heart's a fluttering all day long. You're only stutter 'cause your poor tongue, it will not utter the words. Oh, what a little moonlight can do. Wait a while till that little moonbeam comes peeping through. You'll get bold, you can't resist him, and all you'll say when you have kissed him is, ooh, 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 I can do. Ooh, 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 what a little moonlight can do. You're in love, your heart's a fluttering all day long. You're only stutter 'cause your tongue, it will not utter the words. What a little moonlight can do. Wait a while till that little moonbeam comes peeping through. You'll get bored, you can't resist him, and all you say when you have kissed him is, ooh, 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 ooh.
So here we see with the participles, and I will stress the asterisk next to the ED is because it is the most common suffix to make a past participle, but it is not the only one. For example, speak, spoke, spoken. And when we have irregular verbs like build and built, so usually when a verb ends with a D, we put a T for the past tense. Ride, rode, ridden. So bear in mind that asterisk is to remind us that ED is not the only suffix you can add to make a past participle. Right? Now, one of the conventions when using verbs to pay attention to is linking verbs with prepositions, right? There are specific prepositions and verb pairings. When we do not use them, we sound like we are novices of the language because these are expected pairings. This is now one of the most common mistakes I see. People just slap any old preposition alongside a verb. But if we look at argue about and argue with, for example. So argue about something means we are identifying the topic of the argument. So I argued about her means her there is the topic of the argument. She's not involved in the argument. You're actually conversing with somebody else and you're talking about her. As opposed to I argue with her, meaning the conversation is between me and her. So the preposition you use will change the meaning at worst, or would suggest if you use the wrong preposition outside of English convention, use a different preposition, it would suggest that you are not as familiar with the language as you should be. One other thing to note, and you could go through the list. This list is not exhaustive, but you can note when you use a synonym, more than likely that synonym will take the same preposition coupling, right? So you can look over the list, get familiar with it, start working it out. The next thing to look at is what you call verb moods. So earlier when we talked about the different sentence functions and in outlining the formula for the different sentence functions, we talked about the different verb moods as well as tenses. So here's a closer look at verb moods. just to stress again, the verb moods help set up the different functions of the sentence. So when you have the imperative mood, that will create an imperative sentence. And we talked about that earlier. So spend some time, look at the two videos, one after the other, and see the connections being made between verb moods and sentence function. Last but not least, for this section, we're looking at a stylistic feature. We call it parallelism. And this is where you arrange sentences, phrases, clauses, or words in similar syntactic patterns. You form a kind, you make a repetition. And you do this to create a logical, a structure that it evokes that those logical linkages between things. So to compare, contrast, to set things up together, right? So again, it's a rhetorical device. It's a specific form of repetition. You can create structure by repeating the sound, meaning, phrases, clauses, and words. You'll find them in almost every example of verbal communication, essays, speeches, expressions, music, poetry, fiction, non-fiction, drama, and so on. One of the major reasons for using parallelism is that it helps establish a rhythm and flow that can drastically affect the mood of your writing. Right? So when we talk about the mood, is how the audience reacts to your writing, how it makes them feel. This kind of rhythm and flow can impact on your audience. So it creates pleasurable reading or speech that is pleasurable to listen to. So it creates writing that is pleasurable to read or a speech that is pleasurable to hear. It also helps your audience to remember the message through the repetition of structure. So the same way we can remember a song or a rhyme faster than we remember a piece of prose, that repetition helps your audience. And especially in public speaking, you will find this technique a lot in public speaking, where we use a lot of parallelism, because that rhythm helps your audience to retain the information better. Right? So to look at creating those parallel structures, and we also do it because it helps us to compare and contrast. Specifically because we're using the same grammatical structure between phrases, clauses, or even words, when we change that word in that structure, the word stands out. We can also choose to disrupt the parallelism to call attention to the contrast. But this is a very risky maneuver, because it can come across as if you are not as skilled a writer as you want your reader to think you are. So let's look at some specific examples. What you see is what you get. So we're looking at this phrase here. If we look at it, it is a reflective or correlating adjective, sorry. Personal, not correlating adjective, correlating pronoun, personal pronoun, verb. What you see. And then we repeat that structure with pronoun what, pronoun you, pronoun get. Verb get. So we're starting with the exact same structure, and here the structure is the parts of speech we use and we arrange it in the same way. In the second example, we start with a gerund. So we want to start our second phrase with a gerund. So being Jim's friend means being constantly alert. But if you look at, we can break it down even further. So we have gerund, possessive noun acting as an adjective, noun, gerund, adjective, constantly, and alert, noun, right? So being Jim's friend means being constantly alert. So again, we are repeating the structure. And in the third one, we start with an infinitive verb, to know her, and we then equal to love her. So to know is an infinitive verb, her is a pronoun, to love infinitive verb, her pronoun. So in creating a parallel structure, we want to first be aware of the grammatical structure in the first part and repeat it deliberately, right? So notice in the first example, what you see, because we change see and get, we call attention to that contrast between seeing and getting, right? So you can see how using a parallel structure enhances your writing and helps convey meaning beyond the words themselves, or call attention to the words in such a way that it enhances the message that you're conveying. Right? So we are, wow, took a while, but the last thing we want to do, we're doing today is we're going to break up into groups of 4, and you're each going to get 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to deliver your extemporaneous speeches to each other as the person is speaking. Write down your notes, your feedback, constructive criticism, and when we rejoin the main group, we will share those, right? So each breakout room would be 15 minutes. That's enough time for you to organize yourself and give your 3-minute speeches, okay? Any questions before we break up? We all clear what we're going to do, right?
Yes, miss.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, miss.
Okay, so how was that?
Great.
Much better than last week.
Yes, much better.
It's almost entertaining.
Almost entertaining. We're getting closer then. It should be completely entertaining by the time we're done, right?
Okay. Completely entertaining. I just undertook that whole thing. It was very entertaining.
So first feedback we're getting is that there is a difference between an impromptu speech and an extemporaneous speech. And getting time to prepare the topic, prepare what you want to see, actually increases the engagement your audience will have. So what I want to do, don't do all volunteer at once, but I will just, each group volunteer. This morning, the students actually started by saying what they thought the standout speech in the room was, and then we talked about it, and then we talked to the speaker. So if you want to follow that, we can follow that. That's fine, right? So whichever group wants to start, go ahead.
I'll go. So if we go in with what you suggested, Dr. Francis, is that the standout speech for me was Ellie. Her speech was on intelligence is not enough. The mere fact that she used a story and personalized it, as well as she had an attention grabber by starting with a rhetorical question, right? That for me, she used not only one example, it had sufficient time that she could have given us 2 examples where she was able to, compare the situation and contrast with what she would have gone through had she continued on that part of doing the subject, doing a degree that she didn't want to, and having the support of her mom, having patience to show that if her mom was just looking at intelligence alone as that, just do what you have to do, go and do that degree, you need to get a job, then that, she don't know where she would be. She would have not, she might have been depressed, but she thanked God for having a mother. And so how she incorporated everything, and she finally summarized what it is, why again, so for me, hers was the best out of all.
And who else was in Ellie's group, sorry. I'm your godmother renaming you. Sorry.
I was, miss. And forgive me, my camera for some reason not working tonight. I don't know.
That's
so,
okay.
But I was in the group. I too liked Ellie's presentation. I liked all, as a matter of fact, because I find they were just, listen, I told them that I was so engaged that I forgot to actually make notes. I made some based on memory, but it was so engaging. But Nathani, the thing with Nathani is in the group as well. I liked hers because of the real life experience that she pulled on. Now, yeah, I liked Ellie's because of her personal experience, but because Nathani, she drew examples from real life experiences, things that could happen to us every day, her thing was real wealth is not measured in money, so because she was able to speak about, yes, you have friends, but how will that really equate in the end, like, your friends loving you, these kind of different things. And she pulled on somebody being in the hospital, and so for me, that stood out. Disha one was good as well. Disha pulled out some philosophy for us there that, really made everything come together.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ellie, how did you feel now that you prepared for the speech?
Oh, I was actually pumped and ready. I was pumped and ready. As compared to last week, it was nerves and a little bit of confusion and a lot of uncertainty and not being sure that I could pull all my points together, correlatively. But this week, because I could prepare, I had that like a strength. It felt like a strength and a big advantage for me. So it was good. I enjoyed doing this speech, actually.
Okay, good. So I keep stressing prepare, especially if you have an opportunity to do extemporaneous, scripted, or recited. The more you prepare, the more confident you're going to feel because you're going to know the material, right? And as Ellie pointed out, you will switch that nervous energy into excited energy because I know what I'm doing and I'm about to do my best, right? Nathani, how did you feel giving the speech?
It felt great, actually. I was actually looking forward to it all day. I was excited. I never did any type of public speaking. So researching, quite a lot of research to see, what it's about, how to go about doing it on my own. So I was excited to present.
Okay, good. And thank you for bringing that up. I always stress, I am your instructor. I don't know everything. I might not be explaining it in the language that is familiar to you or you can fully grasp. So by all means, if you find a credible, emphasis on credible source outside of class that helps you understand, oh, this is what she meant when she said X, Y, and Z. By all means, bring it in. Officially, we call that connective learning, taking what you know outside or taking what you learn in the classroom and connecting it to something outside to get a bigger, fuller picture. And it helps you then really personalize, engage, understand the information that we're sharing in class today, right? So what other group would like to share? I think I'll do maybe 4 more groups before we break. So looking for 4 more groups willing to share.
Okay, good night, everyone. My name is Andrusia. Miss from our group, I actually liked Stacy's presentation about if she were an animal, she said she would like to be a dog. Yeah, so I found Stacy's one to be really interesting and engaging.
Okay, and what techniques did you observe her using to help make it an engaging speech?
Miss, she actually used adjectives, you know, to describe the dog and wearing clothes, and you know, she compared it to the saying that a dog is a man's best friend, and if she were a dog, she would be able to walk the streets and walk naked without anyone saying anything. Yeah, so she actually used characteristics of the dog to herself, and you know, she made it real and entertaining. Yeah.
Okay. And Colleen or Naomi?
Miss, I also liked Stacy's one. It was very engaging as she described, but I also loved how I forgot her name. I'm so sorry. But she described her own as being, she also did, if she was an animal, and she did an eagle. And what I liked was that how she spoke about, you know, an eagle being able to see its prey from a distance. And it just showed me that it just put me in the position that if I were an eagle, what exactly what I would do. You know, look at my prey from afar, and then I will dive in and I will analyze my prey before I get to them, in other words, basically. You know, so I like both of them because how they Naomi is her name, sorry. I now see her put on her mic, Naomi. Yes, I liked how she described I like how she described the eagle, the whole eagle story. It was just captivating to me. Just like how Stacy's own was basically about the dog, hers was in the same aspect, you know, so.
Okay. Naomi?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
When Stacy when she spoke about her topic and she said that she wanted to be a dog, I wondered, well, why would someone want to be a dog? And then when she started to really reveal that, well, from what I gathered is that she wanted to be perceived as a friend, because we know that a dog is a man's best friend and a dog is a comforter to someone. So from what I heard in her speech is that is what she would like to be to other persons, to bring that comfort, to be a good friend. That is what I perceive from that. So I thought it was it was well thought out, and it was reflective in a sense. So I'm hoping that that is what she was thinking when she was writing the speech. Or maybe I am just having a different interpretation of the entire thing. So Stacy.
Okay, and while you're
am I correct there?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
That's the next question. How did you feel, speech givers? How did you feel giving the speech? And this is open for everyone in the group. How did you feel when you were speaking? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Did you feel prepared, unprepared? What was going through your mind?
Yes, I was nervous.
I wanted to say that although I gave my speech, I was quite nervous still. I don't know. I still had a lot of nervous feeling. Although I prepared and wrote down everything, I started to fumble and mumble in between as well because, you know, the nervousness started to take over, you know. But I think that, yes, preparing compared to last week when it was a bit more impromptu, I think preparing did a better audio compared to last week.
Okay. And Androsha, how did you feel speaking?
Miss, I was prepared, but 5% nervous. I actually felt like I was trying to reach out to my audience while speaking. So I was more focused on my audience instead of me, but I was a little 5% nervous because I think it's because of the new people. But other than that, I was prepared and more focused on reaching the audience.
Okay. So we're getting that, I mean, nervousness will never go away, right? I will end the class with an example how nervousness never goes away no matter how much you practice, but the more you practice, the more you're able to deal with that nervous energy, right? So give me 2 more groups.
I'd like to go. My favorite speech from my group was Aficia's speech. The topic was If I Were an Animal. She chose the turtle. I was very confused. Why would you want to be a turtle? And she first started off by stating that she's afraid of death and they live quite long. And I was like, okay, all right. And then she listed some, well, she didn't list, but I wrote it down as a list. Some facts about turtles. She spoke about how it is they have the ability to breathe underwater, and she likes water. If she could breathe underwater, she would stay there very long if she could. So she likes that. They're good swimmers. She likes how they could camouflage themselves. And their slow metabolism, something about their slow metabolism. She said that I couldn't remember, but she listed pretty good facts. And at first, before she started to speak, I could tell she was nervous. She was breathing and doing some exercises, but as soon as she spoke, you couldn't tell she was nervous. If I did not see her before, I could not tell that she was nervous.
Okay. So, Aficia, how nervous were you?
Plus, I was very nervous. I am naturally a nervous person, so I was very nervous. But then I was just like, I really did like a mute my mic and I kind of did like a kind of breathing technique, and I was like, just do it. So I was very nervous at first, but I tried my best not to show that while I was doing this speech.
Okay. One thing I could recommend too, especially for our right now, and we don't know when it will change. Right now, most of our presentations are going to be done via Zoom, right? So if you look at the top of your Zoom window, you'll see a toggle button, speaker view, right? So when you click on speaker view, because you're the person speaking, you fill the majority of the frame. and then you will see in small images on top the people you're talking to. So you get to control just how intimidating that audience actually is, because you're literally shrinking them down, to small manageable sizes. So it's a mental trick you can do via Zoom, right? So granted, we're supposed to pay attention to the audience. You want to be able to see the audience so you can get the feedback. And when we talk about the communication module and we talk about feedback, so those are the verbal and non-verbal cues your audience will give you. So if you look at your audience and 90% of them are yawning, right? Suggest that they're disengaged from the speech and you need to do something about it. If, they're fidgeting, turning around, if they're locked into you might, we know this from church experiencing, you get this chorus of amens and yes and clapping and all these different things. That is actual feedback. So as the sender, you're paying attention to your audience doing these things. Because the more you get the positive engagement, the more you know that your message is being received, decoded, and understood. And your audience will be telling you as you're communicating, hey, I get it. I like what you're saying. Woo, that's a good point, right? So that kind of fortitude comes with a lot more practice. But in the meantime, if you're new to speaking and you want to build that confidence and you're doing it over Zoom, if you put it on speaker view, you can see your audience. But it's almost as it goes back to practicing in front of the mirror. You're mostly seeing yourself and you could, look up and see the audience. And again, eye contact is looking at the camera, not at the screen. So that also kind of helps. Shorter distance looking at the screen, looking at the camera rather than looking at the screen when you put it in speaker view, right? But it's good, Afisha, that you did breathing exercises. If we were in a public space and you were walking onto the stage, most people would not see the breathing exercise, right? So if you get that out before you go to the podium, you will just stand up there as a confident person. And again, if you square your shoulders, stick out your chest, breathe from your diaphragm, so you're filling your lungs, breathing from your diaphragm and letting out nervous energy as you breathe out, and then you give your speech, right? One more group who wants to go? And I think we're if I'm not mistaken, we're kind of learning from each other how, different ways of dealing with nerves, presenting, making an impression, right? Excuse me. So one more group who wants to go?
I don't mind. I'll just pick up. The best speech of the night to me would have been Arnold's, for the mere fact that he had to deal with a lot of interruptions and feedback, and he still managed to deliver his speech. He did eye contact most of the time, but he kept looking away, which is, normal. He engaged with the audience. He was asking questions. He was asking us, you understand what I mean? And asking us if we related to the examples that he was putting out. But most of all, with the focus that he got, even with Marsha talking, because I couldn't even hear him at one point, but you could still see that he was focused on delivering his speech no matter what. She could be yelling at the top of her lungs and he wouldn't have budged.
Okay. Marsha, I know you had some technical difficulties, but you managed to listen. So do you
Yes, I did. So Danielle didn't get to say hers, didn't get to finish. Anna's speech was clear, it was well delivered. And again, yes, he had to deal with me talking to you, telling you, miss, I can't see anything, I can't. So he did an awesome job. He just kept on with the speech, even though there was distraction. So that showed that he had, or maybe he did practice the speech, and he was able to deliver it in the way he wanted to deliver it. He was confident, his tone was confident. I didn't hear any no set of pauses to kind of grasp what he has to say. He just said what he had to say and get it across. And you heard him expressing how passionate he was about this topic, the most important lesson of his life. And that is what I got from his speech. Shanike, in her speech, it was short, the message was delivered, and she spoke about when she grew up, what she would like to be, and that would be a teacher. She talked about different instances where she encountered different things, but realized that it's teaching that she wanted to do. But that was the two speech we got to listen to. Another one was a little bit long, but we got his message. He, again, and what Daniel said, he did engage the group. So he said, he gave an example, and then he said, you understand what I mean? So he brought it down to our dialect, I should say. He brought it down to us, to our level. So we were able to understand what he was saying and what he wanted to deliver.
Okay, so Arnold, how did you feel giving the speech?
I felt confident giving the speech, and that's primarily because, well, I'm a singer. Many of you may not know that, but I'm a singer, classically trained singer. So I am used to engaging the audience and performing and stuff. So I've had many years as a child coming up through music festival and performances, and so it didn't come very difficult for me to engage or to give a speech. Understand? So, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it, and I think it's because I would more perform than give speeches. It's an area that I never really ventured much into, and I think I could do it. You know, I could do a lot more speech deliveries.
Okay, so at the end of the semester, as you're interested in doing more speech deliveries, at the end of the semester, you know, we have a presentation. It'll be up to you to determine whether you want to do extemporaneous, scripted, or memorized. Again, I won't put one style above the other. It is your comfort level. Depending on the topic, sometimes you want it written out completely beforehand. Sometimes you can go with the flow and you can just speak off, you know, you can do it extemporaneously. And if you're very confident, you could actually do an impromptu speech, but you will not be doing an impromptu speech for your presentation because you would know the topic far in advance and you would be planning, right? Right. So the last thing I want to do, I want to leave you with an example of a scripted speech. This person practiced at least 5 to 10 times before giving the speech, engaged in proxemics by setting up the speech area as best as possible and using certain props or, yeah, let's call them props, right? To help alleviate nervousness and so on and so on. But even with all that preparation, I want you to pay attention to the speech and we'll talk about it a little bit afterwards, okay?
Listen. Yeah. Hello, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I am here to discuss something that troubles me as an educator, scholar, and a human being. I know we are in an incredible and unimaginable epoch, but in the midst of the chaos of a pandemic and the urgency of anti-racist protests around the world, we have time to mull, to muse, to question. One of the consequences of this extra time is the impetus around the world to tear down monuments of a violent past. What I want to address, which may seem tangential or too ephemeral, grows out of the same impetus. I want to discuss the power entrenched in one of the most widespread monuments to civilization, the very brick and mortar of our understanding of ourselves, words. Yes, words. The puffs of air and sound that we use every day, the abstract combination of letters meant to represent a concrete word, words. More to the point, I want to examine the power of words, the power of words to hurt, heal, and shape our reality. We need to pay attention to our words, the words we use, the words we ignore, the language we excuse, because these words are not innocent and innocuous. They carry the power to create our reality. My intention is not to convince you to abandon certain words or aim for a political correctness which substitutes words but leaves intentions intact. My goal today is to convince you that we need to pay attention to our words because words have power and we should wield them wisely. Words can hurt or heal. Often in anger or cold contempt, we can wound with insults and derogatory words. We fat shame, slut shame, all kinds of shame with words. We inflict racial slurs on each other like proverbial sticks and stones. We call each other stupid or vulgar or common. We drive these words deep into the gut, sometimes with a callous nonchalance, having spared nary a thought to the size or depth of the injury. Because words can, and all too often do, harm. We unleash these words in the pursuit of our own happiness, security, or revenge. And when we cup our souls in our hands, bleeding from the onslaught, our friends and allies, our linguistic nurses, patch us back up with words, heartfelt apologies, expressions of love and encouragement, poems, songs, stories, words. From this duality arises a persistent argument. Words can hurt or heal based on a person's intent. This is one of the major debates, especially in minority communities, concerning certain words. For example, the word nigger versus nigger. Recently, I had a Facebook conversation where my friend and I discussed the word is dual. For some, it is keener and hotter than lead. The ER is a trigger. For others, as my friend put it, it is a sign of community. The A is for acceptance. And it is not the only word commandeered by the oppressed. Other words like bitch and queer have been commandeered too. Are these attempts harmful or revisionist? To make a meaningful conversation about this, we need to understand words in a metaphysical way as reality shapers. They have the ability to conjure states into being. In some sense, we acknowledge this power on the personal level. Have you ever asked someone to put in a good word for you, to speak to a potential employer or mate for you, to create opportunity with well-meaning words? What about the caution to be careful what you wish for? Or the more positive version, speak it into being. These sayings remind us of the power of words. In another sense, we acknowledge this power on a universal level. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This divine Word formed land and sea, sky, sun, stars, and man. We create with words. The substantive message is true within and without the religious context. We can conjure nations with a declaration, broker peace with talks, create communities with hashtags. This translates into the power of words and language to shape our reality. You see, words are all we have to describe the world around us. Even more instantaneous than your cell phone camera is your friend firing off a description of an event. And this is the order of conversation. Words, then pictures. Words condition us. They tell us what the world is or should be, who we are or could be. So what does it mean when we use oppressive language to mean ourselves? I remember going out on a date with a young man many, many years ago. I remember the conversation there towards racial identity. I remember upsetting him by refusing to call myself Black. I explained that in Trinidad, I am Black. In the United States, I am Afro-Trinidadian. I remember his being frustrated and his response, Black is what they call you, the they being white Americans. He couldn't understand that I chose to call myself what I liked, when I liked, that I could choose at all, that I could object to someone else labeling me. You see, words shape how we view the world and ourselves in it. That is why Ngugi wa Thiong'o argued for writing in African languages first, to erase the hegemony of colonization that insisted Africans had no words sophisticated enough to describe and order reality, that Africans were not sophisticated enough to speak or dream. For many of us in the diaspora, this is a lesson of the languages we speak. We are taught the binary of civilizing European language versus the formulations of our own tongues. Our realities have been shaped by this power binary. We can eschew the language altogether, or like Derek Walcott, turn it into a weapon against oppression. Outmaneuver them in their own tongue. But we must be careful, for to quote Ali ibn Abi Talib, words are under your control until you speak them, but you come under their control once you have spoken them. Yes, we have power over words, but only if we are conscious. As Imam Ali says, a fool's mind is at the mercy of his tongue, and a wise man's tongue is under the control of his mind. If we are not careful, words will haunt us, undermine us, destroy us. This is the same with political correctness for political correctness' sake. It is not enough to replace words without replacing the intent. As Mother Teresa cautioned, words which do not give the light of Christ increase the darkness. But is it enough to replace intent without replacing the word? I started by calling words monuments. We build statues to venerate our heroes. They're historical artifacts for future generations who will dig up our monuments and assume we put them up in homage to the brightest and the best, the ideals of our society and culture. And so, I leave with a series of questions. Does repurposing derogatory words really divest them of their negative power? Does it recenter the hate and power structure behind the word? Just so I can transcribe it later. What did you like best?
Oh, okay. So yes, that's an example of practice, and still, even though you practice a lot, might get some performance issues. One of the noted feedback is that people didn't understand I was saying words. They thought I was saying worth until maybe the third or fourth time I said the word. Now, this, by the way, is an excellent example of how repetition can help drive home your message. Because by the third time they heard it, it's like, it can't be words, it has to be words, the way it's being used. I do a bad thing. Don't ever speak when you're chewing gum, because you will mix up, you will impair placement in your mouth to make certain words. I didn't have any water with me, so when my mouth went dry. That caused some issues as well. So again, prepare, fix your space, prepare for anything that might disrupt your speech, and as best as possible, plan in advance how you could address or mitigate those things, right? So sometimes I like to share with my class examples. And I've been there, I've done that. I'm not just making stuff up. I've been in that position. That's an example of a scripted speech. I was not going to remember all those things. Writing down notes was not going to help me because there were specific things that I needed to do in there as well. So the last thing, if you have any questions, the floor is yours. And then the class is dismissed and we can go. I'm starving. I don't know about you all, but I need to eat dinner.
Miss?
Yes.
Well, actually, I don't have a question, but I'm going back to your presentation, and I found that you were being a bit hard on yourself because I understood everything you said. You understand? All your words were clear and very articulate, able to engage. You understand? And you kept my attention. And I found the way that the research, you could see that a lot of research would have gone into this presentation because you even made reference to biblical things and then other philosophical things, and you're able to marry them all together. And I found that I would like to commend you for that. I thoroughly enjoyed the presentation. I mean, perhaps sometimes we are most critics because when I sing, I do the same thing too. But I heard everything you said, and from the onset, I understood words are not good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, if you look at the presentation, and apart from being harsh on myself, I'll be very honest that I did prefer the podium because I'm nervous. I have nervous tics, and the podium hides that.
Oh, okay.
Right? It camouflaged the fact that I was shifting from foot to foot.
I didn't see that at all.
Right. That's a trick. Right? So if you know, that's why practicing in front of a mirror is important. If you know, you switch from foot to foot, you sway a lot, or you might need something to tap or something to grip, and you can get a podium, use a podium. Doesn't work if it's a clear podium because then everyone can see everything. But if you can get a podium or a prop that you can actually help you to physically alleviate that nervousness, that helps as well, right? And as you say that you're a classically trained singer, I am not, but I used to do open mics, and it's a lot different singing without my guitar than singing with my guitar. You could do anything when that instrument is in front of you. So again, it's like a security blanket. It's like a prop. So even if you sink down to the level of superstition and you say, okay, I'm going to wear these kind of socks because every time I wear these kind of socks, things go my way. Any tricks, any psychological plays you can do to make yourself feel more comfortable in the moment, do that, right? And also because I was reading, I needed a podium because that was about an 8-page speech, right? So fixing your space, knowing how your space will enhance what you have to do, alleviate your own nervousness, make it more impressive or make it clearer. Proxemics are very important, right? Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Miss.
Yes.
I want to know if you, like when people doing speech, do they ever overcome their nerves? No matter how long they're doing this speech for?
Well, we saw in the one example, the woman had been presenting for 7 years, and every day for those 7 years, she was a ball of nerves right before going on. And it is, again, yes, it is instinctual to feel that you're on the crosshair between being afraid and being excited. And it takes a little mental trick to change from fear to excitement. You might be nervous up until you hit that stage, and then you switch yourself on. And as we're using the example of musicians, so people like Bungie, for example, you wouldn't know Bungie has that amount of energy on stage, off stage, because he's very quiet.
Yeah.
Very quiet, very reserved, and then he becomes a completely different person when he walks on stage, right? A lot of performers do that. It's a mental state you go into. Once you touch that stage becomes a sacred space. Once you touch that stage, even if you think then of your presentation area as that sacred, special space, and when you step in, I'm going to blow everybody away. I know what I'm doing. And put on that confident persona, right? So those are some of the tricks people use, especially if it's a space you're familiar with. You've had success in that space before. You can then build on that former glory and maintain it for your new presentation. So part of it are their general tips. Part of it is that find what works for you, what makes you feel comfortable, even when you're nervous, what makes you feel comfortable, right? So personally, for me, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, Miss, I understand all that. No, but I understand even though you might be nervous, you find your comfort space and you just blew it, you just do you. But what I am asking is if like they don't feel nervous, or if at any point in time you just feel relaxed and you just do you, or you always get that like nervous or excitement feeling when you have to perform, or do it ever go away completely? That's what I want to know.
I don't think it will ever go away completely. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you are with that nervousness. You can accommodate it in your everyday life, right? So imagine for those of you who are drivers, the first time you drive by yourself, it's a terrifying experience, right? The more you drive, the more you take for granted what you're doing, right? So even if you feel stressed or nervous in a specific situation, you also know, I have the experience, I know how to get out of this, I know what to do, right? Which is why we should always be kind to new drivers on the road, because they don't have that confidence yet, right? So give them the space. So it's the same thing with public speaking. The more you do it, even though you might feel nervous stepping on stage. Last weekend, or weekend before last, the 24th. Now I don't even remember when that was, but the 24th of October, I moderated a panel for the university on Banya Belly Calypsos. And I was extremely nervous. I've done it before. I've spoken in public before, but I needed this to go so well. We had celebrities on the panel, and I was like, they need to know UTT is the place to be, right? So I didn't want people like we had Wendell Manwaran on, and I didn't want people walking away thinking UTT full of nonsense. So I was very nervous for it to go very well, and that nervousness rode me through that entire panel, right? And I kept it to myself. I tried to be me. So we had music. So when we played the music and it was catchy, I said, go ahead and dance, feel free, because it helped alleviate some of that, helped me expend some of that energy. But you never 100% lose that nervousness. You gain skills to cope with that nervousness, right? And that is the key difference, right? We will never be completely fearless. People who are fearless aren't, I don't want to sound disparaging, but they're not that bright, right? Being brave is not being fearless. Being brave is soldiering on despite being afraid. And if you have a conscience, if you're conscious and you have a pulse, There are so many things out there that, you know, will scare you, legitimately so, but don't let it stop you in your tracks. So you, unfortunately, you will never grow out of being nervous giving a speech. It will just get easier to cope with that nervousness the more you practice, right? Being
Okay,
real.
thank you, Miss.
All right.
Yes. I wanted to make sure it wasn't only me.
Nope. Never
Okay.
goes away. Never
Okay, Miss. My question is concerning the quiz on Friday. I know some persons weren't here. What would the outline be like? Would it be multiple choice or written because it's 2.5 hours? So I'm thinking that we may have to do some writing there.
Yeah, it's a mix. So some multiple choice, some fill in the blank, some essay type questions where you have to write out your answer. So it's a mix, right? And for those of you who joined late and did not hear about the quiz, between Friday and Sunday, your quiz will be posted on Canvas. So you have 72 hours to start your attempt within that 72 hours. The quiz is 2.5 hours long, so block out 2.5 hours. So if, say, you're going to do the quiz 2 o'clock Saturday morning, make sure you have 2.5 hours Saturday morning to do the quiz. If you navigate away from the page, you will not get back in. If you shut down and come back on, you will not get back in. Wherever you reach would register as you completing the quiz. So make sure you set aside that 2.5 hours. You might not need the full 2.5 hours, but you will have time then, if you finish quickly enough, to review, change some answers, go back, make sure it is what you want to submit before you submit. But block out that 2.5 hours. Don't go anywhere else, just sit down and do that quiz in that 2.5 hours. So between Friday morning and Sunday night, block out a 2.5 hours by yourself, sit down, do the quiz, and then submit, right? So it's communication and grammar, what we've been covering in class so far, so shouldn't be anything new and exciting or disturbing.
Miss, is there any essay type writing in it, or?
Short answer.
Okay.
Right?
Hi, Miss. Excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I have one comment and 3 quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
First comment, your the speech you gave, I was like, okay, I was like, hey, look, Miss, all right, you know, but it was really good. I was blown away. I actually picked up my phone and some of those words you used, I was like on Google trying to find out the meaning of those words and some of the quotes because I was like, wow. So I was really engaged. So that's one. In terms of the quiz, this girl, Crystal, she got bumped off. She said her laptop shut off. So she missed some of the information that was going on. So just to clarify, is the camera on in the quiz?
No, oh yes, because you're all new to Canvas, sorry.
Yeah.
Making assumptions. It will literally be just like you know, if you do an online survey. So it's not via Zoom. So there's no camera. It's on Canvas itself. So you'll go on Canvas, make sure you have your 2.5 hours, and you either, it's multiple choice, fill in the blank, and short answers, right? So it's not Zoom. You're not sitting together in a classroom. You have 72 hours in your own time. Sit down and do the quiz.
Okay. And how would it compensate for, just asking, because I know it happens sometimes if like somebody has technical difficulties and for whatever reason computer go down or what?
If your computer crashes in the middle of the quiz, take a note of it, record it how best you can, pictures, whatever, and you would actually have to let us know that it crashed, and we could talk to TLC. We would meet with ourselves and see what is the best way forward. We're in a new situation. Okay. Usually your quiz is in class. And I think this is the first time for many that the quiz is going to be completely online.
All right. So, and two other quick questions. Crystal wanted me to ask as well. There on Canvas before we would have seen something with a quiz, and then we see it was like it was taken down. She just wanted to ensure that that was not in fact something to be done. It had quiz 1 next to it.
No.
Okay. And transitive and intransitive verbs, I was just having a little issue in the understanding of that.
Okay. So I'll say step 1. I'd like to take note that words can function as different parts of speech. Parts of speech can function in different ways. So a verb can function in different ways, right? So just bear that in mind. So really it's via context that we will figure out what type of verb it is, what it's doing in the sentence, and so on. Now, to be specific, a transitive verb takes an object, right? So, for example, I threw. You threw what? Right? I threw the ball. So it needs an object for it to make sense. If I came up to you and I threw, I'm waiting for the rest of that sentence, right? I want to know what you threw. I threw a ball. So transitive verb needs an object for it to make sense, right? Intransitive is the opposite of that. An intransitive verb does not need an object to make sense. It doesn't need to be acting on anything. So I walked, right? That's a complete thought. I walked. As a matter of fact, I can't walk an object. It's not an action I can do to an object, right? I can put a prepositional phrase. I walked on water. I can put an adverbial phrase. I walked away. But notice walk is not acting on these other words. The other words are actually, describing the action walked. They're not objects. We have verbs that can be both transitive and intransitive. I ate. That's a complete thought. Or I ate cake. Also a complete thought. So what kind of verb is I ate? Transitive or intransitive?
Transitive?
I would say transitive.
Yes. No. I ate.
No.
I ate. Up.
Would it be intransitive? Because
you could
say ate, yeah.
Right. I don't have to say what I ate. I ate.
I ate.
Right? I ate cake. Transitive or intransitive?
Intransitive.
Transitive.
Transitive. Because cake is the object. I did something to that cake. I ate it.
Transitive.
Right? I should stop using this example because I'm very hungry right now. And now I want a piece of cake and I'm not supposed to eat cake because I'm diabetic. So.
Oh Lord. Miss Well, I do understand now. Thank you.
All right. So look at, and to clarify a little bit more, the object of a verb is a noun or a pronoun, right? It's an item or a thing that's being acted upon. So the object of a verb is always a noun or a pronoun. If it is not a noun or a pronoun, then that verb is most likely intransitive. I slept on the bed. I slept all day. I slept till 8. I can't sleep the bed, right? And on the bed is acting as a preposition because it starts with on, and on is a preposition. So on the bed, right? You can think of it as a preposition. You can think of it as, well, actually, yes, it's a preposition because it's telling you the position of I, right? So it's not a noun, it's not being acted on. So those are some of the clues you can look for. Where it is in the sentence, what is following it in the sentence, is there a noun anywhere after it that might be an object, and so on and so on, right? So transitive needs an object, intransitive does not need an object, right? Any other questions?
Miss, one quick thing. With the quiz, can we use our notes or no?
I do not think it's an open book quiz. Right,
yes, but how would you know if we don't use our book?
Because you are all honest people and you're all trustworthy and you will do the right thing.
That's why I asked that question, Miss, because I was saying, but if it's a quiz, this not supposed to be like a test, but how would Miss know if we use our book or not?
And also, people think open note quizzes or open note tests are easier. They're not. They are not.
You'll have to look for the answers, and then the time it's taken to look for the answers, and then if you don't have proper notes.
Yes. Yes, right? It is better, and it is not a specific answer you will find in your notes, right? These are skills that you're supposed to be able to apply at the drop of, or in any situation, right? So once you know the basic definitions, the basic techniques, no matter what sentence or what question is put in front of you, you pull from your memory and you answer the question. So it's not open notes. I've always been torn with open note quizzes because I don't find they're any easier. You get flustered and you flip through your notes and you can't find it. It's like, but it was on 5 and I don't know what
that's so true. Yes.
It actually makes me panic more than just taking a deep breath and answering, right? So, but you are all trustworthy, honest people.
And the quiz is going to be on which chapters, Miss?
Say it again.
Which chapters is the quiz going to be on?
So it's what we've covered in class so far, and using is basically grammar and communication skills, right? Grammar. So it'll be what we covered in class. I have not stressed any of the textbooks. If you were able to get the textbooks on the list and you could use it, you have access to it, that's fine. Given the situation we're in right now, I'm not going to make it mandatory that you have the textbooks and you use the textbooks because we're in a difficult space. We might not be able to find the book. Libraries might shut down again. So many things could go on, right? So 5 minutes left, is 7:55. Any other questions, comments before we close? So good luck with your quiz, and I will see you next week, Tuesday.
Dr. Francis, one thing. We have a cause and effect presentation due on the 9th of this month, right? Where we have to choose a topic about Cape students, Greenville, transportation, public transportation, etc., etc. Right? My question is, how is this presentation going to be drafted up as an essay form with pictures and pictorials and videos and such? How do we go about doing this?
I think we will hold off on that and just do the main presentation at the end, because there's a presentation attached to this class. That was supposed to give you some practice And I think we will push it back to when we're actually talking about presentations using visual aids and that kind of stuff. So we practice then. So don't worry about it right now. I will change the due date. I didn't even attach it to, I don't think I attached it to a module just yet either, did I?
No, not from what I'm seeing.
Right, so yeah, ignore it for the moment.
Okay.
Right, you push it back. So the only homework you have from this week is to do the process analysis outline and introductory paragraph. Oh, and as we say that, yes, it's a process analysis essay about writing a process analysis essay, because apparently I am mean and I think it's funny to write about the process that you're learning. But it also helps you to really engage in it, because how would you explain in an essay to someone who's never seen a process analysis essay how you do a process analysis essay, right? So what are the 3 main steps you need? How are you breaking down those 3 steps into these different stages? And so on. And by the time you're done, because you're teaching someone else how to do process analysis, you would be an expert at process analysis. So it's only the outline and an introductory paragraph. You're not writing the full essay. But the usefulness of this, when you have to write your 2 essays for your portfolio, you already have outlines you could pick up and flesh out. Half the work is done, right? So if that's the last question, I will see you all next week, Tuesday. Please God. Stay safe.
You too.
Do the quiz. Don't worry about it. And I will see you all next week, all right?
Good night, miss.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.